It's a little terrifying because you absolutely cannot miss.
Goalies now are completely at a premium.
Not, right? Like, Canada doesn't have a ton of great options.
Hello, hockey fans. Welcome to the Hockey News Big Show. I'm your host, Katie Gaus, joined by my co-hosts, Michael Traikos and Ryan Kennedy. And guys, the title of this first segment is Didn't See That Coming. And I think we all know what we're going to be starting off with. It is Torts. He's out in Philly. Big shock value there. Didn't see that coming, or did we? Because maybe this isn't a shock. You consider the post-game comments that we saw from Tortorella just about 36 hours before getting fired. He had a 7-2 loss to the Maple Leafs on Tuesday night, and afterwards said, I'm not really interested in learning how to coach in this type of season. Now, we can break that down and find what the true meaning behind it was, but either way, Philly didn't like what they heard. By Thursday morning, they announced that they had relieved Torts of his duties, and associate coach Brad Shaw is now the interim head coach. So first and foremost, what do we think about those comments from Torts and then the subsequent decision by Philly to move on from him, Michael?
There are 8 games left, Katie.
Oh.
8 games. He couldn't have waited until 8 games from now and then said,
really
all right, I
unhappy
can't do it anymore. Like, you're basically there. It just didn't make any sense. Like, I get it. He loses 7-2 to the Leafs, and then the game before, they also gave up 7 goals. So it is weighing on him. And I'll say, like, that trade deadline really took the wind out of, the Flyers' sails, so to speak. Like, losing Scott Laughton, I think, really decimated the dressing room, as well as Erik Johnson and some of the others that they had to give up. So, yeah, I just go back to it. Like, 8 games. Like, you were just there. You're almost at the final, the finish line.
Yeah, it's it certainly feels like he was close. I'll add this before I get your answer, Ryan, because I saw this on Twitter this morning. Kevin Kurz tweeted out that he was told by a team source, it's fair to say something happened between Cam York and John Tortorella in Toronto, and it contributed to his dismissal on Thursday morning. Because as we know, Cam York was dressed but didn't play in the game that they had last night. So again, just adding to the weirdness, it said that they both probably crossed the line. So you add the comments, you add that in. Something obviously went down, but regardless, what are your thoughts on everything that's going on with Philly in this decision?
Yeah, I mean, starting with Cam York, I wonder, Mike, if that's why it was done with 8 games to go and not just letting him play out the string. Like, maybe something happened that they could not let fester. It's really interesting
in that game against Toronto.
Yeah, exactly. It's really interesting with Tortorella because if you look at the Flyers in the sort of grand scheme of things, like, they're in a rebuild, and maybe Tortorella was just not the right guy at the right time for them because, here's a guy that's won a Stanley Cup. He's dealt with teams that have been very high in the standings, marquee teams, and you're asking him to be patient. And I don't know if that's in his wheelhouse. And it's not a knock. Some coaches are good at, coaching young players up. Some guys you bring in if you want to take the next step. If you're a true Stanley Cup contender, like a Pete DeBoer, for example. And, if you look at it, it's like, okay, the Flyers get Matvei Michkov in the draft a couple of years ago. It's like, all right, that's a pretty good cornerstone for the future if he works out. And so far, so good in that regard. But then they have a better than expected season last year. They ended up drafting, I think it was 12th or 13th overall. They take Jet Luchenko, who, could be a great prospect. Yeah. But think about if they were bad again. If they had a typical rebuild, they might have had Ivan Demidov. They might have had Zane Parekh, right? Yeah. Or Zeev Buium, who was picked one selection before they went. So I think this was a move where it's like, okay, if we're going to really rebuild, we need to be terrible. And Torts won't allow his teams to be terrible because it's not in his DNA.
Yeah, he just can't do it.
He's the king of getting teams to overachieve, though. Like, look what he did in Columbus. Like, no one was expecting them to make the playoffs the year that they took down Tampa and, swept them in round 1. And he almost did the same thing with Philly last year. And, you talked to Daniel Briere, and Ryan, you mentioned this a lot last year. That was what Danny Briere wanted in terms of a rebuild. He wanted a competitive rebuild. He wanted guys earning their
Yeah.
ice time, and not doing the typical Buffalo approach, which is be terrible and then all of a sudden try to flip the switch. So I think Torts was good for that. I just don't think he's interested in being a wet nurse to these guys. Like you mentioned, Michkov is the future. Jamie Drysdale is the future. Cam York, Noah Cates. Part of his job isn't just to win, it's to develop. And I think if the Flyers have concerns about, okay, are our guys developing properly? And you look at Michkov's season, and arguably he's had a really good rookie year, especially coming from the KHL, which is such a culture shock to the NHL. I think you're happy with that. But was Torts happy? And, was Danny Briere happy with the fact that, with 8 games left, he's now laying into Cam York, which is just like, hey, tone it down, bud. We're almost there. Just give him some ice time and let him feel good about his game, and then go into the summer and just do whatever he needs to do to improve.
Torts is going to torts, and it does feel like he just has one way of doing things, and that is his way, and he is good at, like you said, getting teams to overachieve and winning. It makes you feel like he will probably pop up somewhere else. We'll talk about that in a second, but quickly, who do we think should be the next head coach in Philly? Who's a good pick?
I don't think Torts is popping up anywhere else except for maybe the TNT panel or like a Sportsnet or something.
Maybe the NHL recycling bin will finally have it done.
It's funny. I got I don't know if you guys checked out my Twitter yesterday, but I was just getting hammered because I suggested Ian LaPerriere, who's the coach of the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, the Flyers AHL affiliate, could be the guy that is a stopgap before, basically you just want someone to help develop their guys. And why not take a player-friendly coach, a guy that was a heart and soul player for the Flyers, a Masterton winner? Why not make him the go-between coach before you get that next guy who's going to get you into the playoffs? And people are just like, are you crazy? Wrong guy. So I don't even know who the right guy is. Ryan,
you're just not going to say anything now. You're scared.
Yeah, I mean, one thought I had was Don Granato. You're not looking for your forever coach. You're looking for your coach for the next 3-4 years, where again, you're coaching these guys up. Whether it's Michkov or Tyson Forster, Bobby Brink, whoever you're getting in the next couple of drafts, Luchenko and whoever you get this year. Granato is great at coaching players up. Now, as we found out in Buffalo, there might be a ceiling there, but for right now, it feels like he would be a great fit for the Flyers.
I love Donnie Granato getting another job. He's such a, there's a reason why he was part of the national development team program for so many years. So great choice in my opinion.
I like it. Well, we will see. I guess we'll have to wait and see if Torts is going to make any TV debuts anytime soon. All right, well, let's talk about something else that maybe we didn't see coming. Hello, St. Louis. The Blues are unstoppable. 8-game win streak. They are not just in the second wild card, they are very much challenging Minnesota for wild card spot number 1. It is a 2-point swing right now. It kind of feels like the Blues are doing it again, aka getting crazy hot at the perfect time and putting the whole West on notice. What has stood out to you guys about St. Louis during this run? And are teams at this point genuinely concerned about having to face them in round 1?
The thing that stands out for me is the offense. 7 of their 8 wins, they've scored 4 or more goals. You look at during that span in the NHL, they got 3 of the top 4 scorers. Dylan Holloway is leading with 14 points in 8 games. Robert Thomas also has 14 points in 8 games. Jordan Kyrou, 7 goals in 8 games. So, when you're scoring that many goals, you don't need a whole lot of help from their goaltending, but their goaltending's also been good, and they've split the duty between Hoffer and Binnington.
For me, I think Holloway is a big one, and Philip Broberg as well. And it's kind of interesting, they're the two, offer sheet guys from Edmonton. When Broberg got hurt early on in the season, I think it really kind of set St. Louis back. And now that he's been back for a while and really found his form, he's exactly what we thought he could be as he was growing as a young NHL player. So you have that, transitional two-way defenseman that can really open up the game. And, Holloway has been that young power forward who, as you mentioned, Mike, has been on an offensive tear. And then you have that sort of old guard. I mean, keep in mind, they could have traded Braden Shen at the deadline and didn't. Like, imagine the sort of sliding doors moment of the Blues sending Braden Shen to like Vegas and, completely dropping out of the Western Conference wildcard race. But now, yeah, Katie, I would say, like, I wouldn't want to play the Blues in the first round if they keep up like this.
It is so much timing, right? And it's just like these teams, they get on these runs, they get on these hot streaks. Quick follow up on the Blues topic. I want to know, do you think seeing Monty and what he's doing with the Blues that there's a little bit of remorse at all from Boston for getting rid of him?
That's a really good point
Yeah.
because, the coaching change didn't help them. Joe Sacco, I feel for him because it wasn't an easy position to kind of slide into, but you're right. The Blues have been the huge benefactor of getting a really good coach in Jim Montgomery. So I didn't really even think about that. Like, do they have any buyer's remorse or seller's remorse?
Yeah.
We know
Maybe
Edmonton has
trading Linus
remorse.
Ullmark wasn't the best idea.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about something that nobody wants to see, at least if you're in Boston, and that is Brad Marchand playing with the Panthers. It was one thing to get him traded there. Now they actually have to watch him play in a game, and it looks like he is going to make his debut tonight. Jamison Olive with the Panthers said Maurice said to expect him to play tonight. So the first Marchand Panther game is on deck. So I want to know, first and foremost, it looks like he's going to be playing alongside Sam Bennett and Sam Bennett on that second line. So do we like Marchand on that line with Bennett?
I like the possibility. You see what Marchand can do in this new lineup. You're giving him a chance to play with skilled guys. And obviously it's going to be a line that's tough to play against because of Bennett being the center. So I think it's a good litmus test for Marchand to see where he can fit in. Because again, this is a very talented Florida lineup. It's a lot more talented than the Bruins lineup he's coming from.
Yeah, you raised a good point there, Ryan. And Matthew Tkachuk's not there, so things are sort of in flux. And I think this is these next couple of weeks are a chance for the Florida Panthers and Paul Maurice to really kind of see what the lines look like, with Marchand and Bennett and Sam Bennett. I'll say Mackey's been playing great hockey lately. He's got 4 goals and 8 points in, I think, the last 11 games. The guy that's really kind of struggled, and this could be the one guy that maybe slides down to the third line role when Matthew Tkachuk gets back, is Carter Verhaeghe. He's only got a goal and assist in the last 11 games, really kind of struggling. So, in the last game, I think the Panthers actually put Mackey up in Carter Verhaeghe's spot, bumped him up to the top line role. That's how much Maurice loves Mackey's kind of creativity and skill. So, this is a perfect scenario for the Panthers. Really, do they need to win first spot in the Atlantic? Probably not. What do they really need to do is figure out where Marchand and everyone else fits in on their forward core.
Yeah, well, Michael, you started to touch on it there, mentioning Tkachuk, right? Because this is they have too many, options when they do get everybody back and healthy. Sam Bennett has been hot. So Ryan, in your mind, who is the player that could potentially be coming out when Tkachuk is ready to come back? If Sam Bennett stays hot, does that change things? Where do you kind of see that fitting in?
Yeah, that's tough because initially I was thinking Sam Bennett, unfortunately, would be the one that you would have to take out. But Mike, you make a good point about Verhaeghe. Verhaeghe is a proven playoff guy, right? I mean, he has scored so many clutch goals in his NHL career. I think it's one of those good problems to have. If your second line is Tkachuk, Bennett, and Marchand, that's pretty amazing. I think what you do in that scenario, and it's not ideal, but Sam Bennett, maybe he's on your fourth line if you want a little more skill there. And if you want to go heavier, then you keep AJ Greer because that's obviously his game. Sam Bennett is going to have a great career, and it is kind of a numbers game. So, hey, that's why Paul Maurice is the head coach of the Panthers, and I'm not, because he knows how to make those decisions. I don't know. It's vexing.
Either way, good problem to have. And I think it is a huge benefit for Florida to get these few games under their belt with Marchand, see where he fits in, see, what he's capable of. Again, I don't think that they're overly worried about that first place spot. They're worried about being healthy, being rested, and being the best team when game 1 of the playoffs starts. So we'll see what that team looks like on day 1 of the postseason. All right. Alex Ovechkin, 6 goals away from making history and breaking Wayne Gretzky's all-time goals record. records. We know this is a huge deal. We obviously talk about it all season long. We're hockey people. That is our jobs. But it's not just a big hockey moment. It is a massive sports moment to break a record like this. So do we feel like the NHL is doing enough to promote the Great Chase, or maybe is ESPN and the networks, maybe not doing enough to showcase it like they have in the past with, say, Aaron Judge's home run chase? Does it feel like this is getting the attention that it deserves? Like which teams, or which parties, I guess I should say, are doing their job to promote this?
It's difficult because I'm in Canada, so I don't see a whole lot of ESPN, and I'm
Fair.
such a diehard hockey fan that I can't really speak for. Does the casual sports
Sure.
fan even aware? Like, I'm aware because I'm
course.
seeing the highlights every night. I'm reading stories about, what Nicholas Backstrom has said about Alex Ovechkin. But you do raise a good point. Like, if this was, Aaron Judge, like, they promote the heck out of it.
It'd be
South of the
everywhere.
border here. So,
Yeah.
part of me thinks that, it's Alex Ovechkin and he's not Sidney Crosby. He's not a guy who was born in North America, never mind Canada. Maybe that has something to do with it.
Yeah.
Does ESPN or just the greater sports world really want to be promoting a Russian-born hockey player who still has Vladimir Putin on his Instagram,
Not
to the
great. No,
extent?
that's fair. Fair point. What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah. I mean, I think the NHL has done a good job. I just don't think ESPN cares about hockey. If you go to
That's
the
kind of always
website
what we
right
come back
now,
to.
Shots fired by Ryan Kennedy.
I mean, honestly, right? Like you
Yeah.
have to scroll down. And I mean, hey, I still go to web pages because I'm old. But you have to scroll down several different sports to even see a little sidebar on Ovechkin's chase for Gretzky's record. Like there's a bigger
Yeah.
story on the fact that the Tampa Bay Rays are playing in a different stadium this year than Ovechkin breaking a record that we thought was unbreakable. So, and again, I don't get ESPN, the TV station up here, because I'm in Canada. But Katie, I mean, you are down there, so you might have a bit more sense of the coverage.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're spot on, and maybe it doesn't help that we just had opening day, and that's just one more thing to take away from any spotlight that we would be getting on hockey. I think Michael makes a great point with Russia, the connections there, and obviously not necessarily being the poster child player that you just want to go all in on promoting. From an ESPN standpoint, though, it does feel like this is such an easy opportunity for something so cool that, maybe casual fans would be interested in if they knew it was going on, because you just pop it in the corner and it causes them to stop for a second and think, what's in my corner screen? What's going on here? Oh, wow, this record I didn't know about. I feel like, why not promote something a little bit, because it is still a cool sports moment in my mind. But again, we are very biased because I love
Katie, you got to
hockey and I
remember
always
though,
love hockey.
what was the biggest, like for casual sports fan, what was the biggest hockey story in the last few months? It was Americans and Canadians brawling at center ice,
True.
basically to start a game.
Yeah.
In a lot of respects, the way that America treats hockey is how Canadians like treat NASCAR. Like they want to see crashes, they want to see violence, they want to see mayhem. And for the casual person to say like, hey, Alex Ovechkin is going to break this record, first you have to explain what the record is. Then you explain who Alex Ovechkin is. Then you explain who Wayne Gretzky is and his importance. And it's like, you've already lost them. Just show fights, show mayhem. But this kind of minutia, I think, gets lost.
Yeah, I think you're fair. All right, well, let's talk about something else that maybe not every casual fan is going to care about, but I know that I do. It's the NCAA ice hockey tournament. Day one was in the books, and it was wild. So the Big Ten went 0-3. The big story, of course, top team Michigan State, who Ryan picked to win it all, was eliminated by Cornell in their first game. Cornell is such a tough team. It's a tough out. Minnesota had a 3-1 lead in the third period. They got upset in overtime by UMass. Ohio State is out. So obviously with these eliminations, the big story becomes a lot of players, because these are top teams who have prospects, who are connected to NHL teams. And now, are they going to sign? Are these prospects going to turn pro? What's going to happen? But a big one that I want to take a second to focus on is Trey Augustine, the goalie for Michigan State. He was drafted in 2012 2023. Do we think that he will sign and go pro for the Detroit Red Wings, or do we think maybe he's going to go back for that junior season? I kind of want to get your thoughts on this one, Ryan.
I think he's going to come out. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that you look at how much he's already accomplished, and yeah, sure, he's only been there a couple of years, but he was the starter right off the hop as
Right.
a freshman, which isn't typical. So it feels like it's time for him to take another challenge. Back-to-back World Junior Gold as well, right?
Yeah.
So I'd like to see what he can do in the pro system, whether it's in the AHL or even if he has to start in the ECHL with Toledo. If you're a goaltender, like that's a great spot to begin because you want to get those reps.
Michael, for you, I want to know what other prospects maybe are you keeping an eye on? Because there were certainly some other very big names that I think we've talked about in the past who are probably a guarantee now to be making their pro debuts.
Yeah, like for me, the Trey Augustine's interesting for, down the road. Like obviously we're not going to see him in a Red Wings jersey this year. Unless it's garbage time and they're just like, hey,
They're like, why not?
just go out there.
They've got like
hey.
90 goalies anyway, what's one more?
Yeah, I guess, we mentioned it in the last one, Jimmy Snuggerud, potentially joining the Blues for this run. Again, if you're the St. Louis Blues, maybe you don't want to upset the apple cart, and risk putting a guy in there. But, Ryan, do you think a Snuggerud could help them if he goes in, whether it's the final regular season games or even could he see any playoff action?
I don't know about playoff action unless they hit injuries, because you're right. I mean, he would have to really get up to speed quickly. If the Blues were to secure a wild card spot and there was a game or two left in the season, then sure, reward the kid, get that entry level deal kicked off. But also, there is some AHL games remaining on the schedule. So worst case scenario, Snuggerud turns pro and, goes right to the AHL. The other player I would note is Isaac Howard for Michigan State, the Tampa Bay first rounder. I wonder if he comes out. Like, he might win the Hobey Baker. And so, again, not a lot else to accomplish unless he really wanted that national title and came back next year. But he's a player that I could see turning pro, going to Syracuse in the AHL and getting some reps. And then next season, you look at Tampa Bay and their sort of cap crush. They could use a guy on an entry-level contract that could play kind of up and down your lineup.
I like it. I guess it depends on why'd you want to play college hockey. I wanted to win a national championship. So how much does that matter? Had to get a miracle quote in there. I mean, what else would I be doing on a Friday? All right. Well, guys, it is time now for our Friday segment, our top 8 contenders. So we are now on our 3rd week, and we've already seen some pretty big changes to our list from week 1 to week 2. So I want to kick things off today with Ryan, your list. Start by telling us a team that has moved the most on your list from maybe week 2 to week 3. And it can be up or down or on the list or off the list. Tell us what you got.
Well, I have Winnipeg at number 2 now. I'm just sort of at the point where they keep winning. They're beating good teams. They beat Tampa Bay recently. And I don't see a lot of flaws in the Jets. Conversely, I have Dallas at 7 this week. I'm just worried. Yeah, I'm worried about their path. I'm worried about Miro Heiskanen not being there in a first round where they're going to play what is looking like an absolutely demonic Colorado Avalanche team right now. I mean, they just completely tore apart the Kings last night. And, there's sort of no signs of letting up. So I'm thinking as we get closer, I'm thinking more about the paths, right? So with Winnipeg, I'm a little more, unless they play St. Louis, I'm a little more happy with their path. Washington's another team where it's like, okay, they look like they've got a pretty easy path at this point. So I'm really kind of factoring that in.
That's a smart approach. I didn't think of it that way. I went the other way. I'm like, okay, Dallas and Colorado are playing each other. So I'm just going to put them back to back, 2 and 3. And I'm like, I'm guaranteed one of them is probably going to win the conference.
That's probably, I mean, I don't disagree with that. So Michael, you've got Florida still at your number 1 spot. You still have Washington hanging out at number 8. So what do you think? It's just, you're still not quite sure about them?
I'm still not sure about them. Carolina, I should probably bump up. I just looked at like MoneyPuck.com's Stanley Cup odds, and I think Carolina actually had the best odds according to MoneyPuck, and
Oh,
that might go back to maybe their path. And I probably should bump them up. Watch next week. I bet you Carolina is going to be in my top 4, or at least top 5. But the only big change for me, Katie,
yeah.
was I have Vegas at number 4, and I've
Okay.
got Toronto at number 5. Toronto just seems to be such a vexing team right now.
Mhm.
They lost again to the San Jose Sharks. They don't look good on some nights. Joseph Wall went from, for sure he's going to be the number 1 goalie going into the playoffs, to now you're like, all right, is Matt Murray still available? Like, what's he up to right now? Because he
Right.
just hasn't looked good in his last couple starts. So, what a weird team this Toronto Maple Leafs team is. Like, if they end up backing into the playoffs, I could see them falling out of my top 8.
Well, another
Mm.
big difference that you guys have is that Ryan does still have Edmonton in his top 8, and Michael, you have kept them off your list again. So is this still just a matter of waiting and seeing, like, what are they going to
I've
prove to
seen
us?
enough of Edmonton.
Injuries.
I've seen enough.
You have seen enough?
Yeah,
All
Stuart
right.
Skinner's. Yeah, the goaltending just keeps getting worse. Like, now it's
Yeah.
banged up.
Yeah.
Uh,
That
like, I
was
don't
a
even
tough
care. Like,
meeting.
Draisaitl and McDavid are going to be healthy in the playoffs, but you can't overcome that goaltending and their defense. Again, is it a Stanley Cup winning defense? Probably not. So yeah, Edmonton is probably outside of even my top 10, if you had to ask me.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I keep them in my top 8 is because of that McDavid Draisaitl factor,
Sure.
and also that, like, last year Stuart Skinner was also terrible at times, but
Yeah.
then he turned it on, right?
Sure.
And
Mhm.
so there's a part of me that's like, I'm not going to discount the Oilers because I have seen this show before, right? Like, they are either the worst team in the league or the best team, and if they're the best team at the right time, then they are scary. And yeah, they got flaws, but like I say, I've seen this show before, so I cannot completely remove them.
Is there any factor, I guess we talked a little bit, you just mentioned it, Ryan, about like your conversation about path. Do we feel like ultimately choosing the winner maybe has a little bit to do about the whole journey getting there? Like, do we feel like the East is maybe going to have a little bit of a less physically overwhelming just grind of a journey to make it to the Stanley Cup final? Is there anything to that?
And maybe in the Metro, I
Yeah,
think the
the
Atlantic's
Atlantic
going to be
still
pretty tough, especially if you had a Florida Ottawa first round or a Toronto Ottawa
true.
first round. Like, imagine if you had Toronto, Ottawa, Florida, Tampa Bay. Like,
Yeah.
those teams are going to just like tear at each other as long as possible. There will be gnashing of teeth. There will be fists and blood. It will be very fun to watch.
We want.
Might not be fun to play in for 6, 7 games, but that's when your Washingtons and Carolinas are sitting back, being like, how nice it is to play a heavy but skilled game against teams that we don't absolutely despise.
You think Washington against Montreal would be a physical series, like Arbor Jackeye, Tom
Mm,
Wilson? Ovi still plays physical.
yeah.
I don't know
If
if there's another.
Xhekaj has a regular shift, right? Like, is he too much of a liability in the playoffs? It would be the question.
Yeah.
They probably fight once, right? They probably fight in game 1, and then it's like, all right, we've done that. And then, you kind of see how the results go. Like, if he's -2 that game, then you're like, all right, we're going to put somebody else back in.
Get in here, Gully.
Yeah.
Goo. That's perfect. If you had to pick a series in the West, though, just kind of looking at the landscape that we have right now, what do you think would essentially be the toughest? Is it going to be this crazy gauntlet battle between Dallas and Colorado? Are there any other matchups that you could be like sneaky surprised, like this could be harder than we thought?
I think that's the obvious one, the Dallas, Colorado. I'll say Edmonton, LA.
Yeah.
It's going to be the 3rd time that they faced each other in a
Fourth.
row. 4th?
Yeah,
Yes.
so many
Kidding me?
games,
Every
so many
year.
times.
Oh, so
Yeah.
yeah, back to Gary Bettman's grand scheme on having like divisional rivals. Boy, if that doesn't get you kind of the juices going. But I think that one's going to be really good. LA's
Yeah.
playing great hockey. To Ryan's point, if Edmonton all of a sudden wakes up in the playoffs, that could be just a sneaky good series.
Yeah, I think a lot of that's going to have to do with Stuart Skinner, but I like it. We've got two different approaches in this week's contenders. Ryan's going with the path, and Michael's going with these two teams are both sick. One of them's got to make it to the final, right?
That's the bad. That whoever wins, like Dallas, Colorado, wins the conference, in my opinion.
Well, that's the problem is, again, we talked about this with the format, but like we are basically seeing what probably should be a Western Conference final in our very first round. So it's the way it works. It's what we got. All right, well, listen up, hockey players. You don't need to drop a fortune on sticks when you can get a pro-level composite stick right available to you at stix.com. That is stix.com. Go check out what they've got in store. All right, let's get into some rapid fire. So we talked at the very beginning of the show about Matvei Michkov being, one of the players that had to deal with torts this season, and maybe the development was helpful for him. Maybe not. We'll see how it all plays out. But true or false, now that Torts is gone, do we think that Matvei Michkov might secretly be happy? What do we
Are we
think?
assuming that Torts is the toughest coach that Matvei Michkov has had? Because he's been
That's what I was
playing in
thinking.
Russia.
He did go out and score 2 goals and get an assist to first game without Torts, but
Still, like, I don't know if you've seen how the KHL coaches treat young players, but it's not like with a coddling
easy.
approach. So, Torts might have been Michkov's like best coach, most friendly coach. So I don't necessarily think that he's happy. He's had a great year, so he should owe Torts maybe a lot of gratitude in terms of helping him in this rookie season.
little tongue in cheek here, but what do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, I'm gonna go false. I totally agree with Mike. I mean, keep in mind, SKA St. Petersburg sent Michkov to Sochi, one of the worst teams in the league, probably because they knew he was going to be leaving at some point. That's typically what happens over there. But also, I think Michkov, I mean, he's a competitive kid. I think he wants to be, a superstar NHLer, and he knows that he has stuff to work on. And, Tortorella, he's all about 200-foot players. So I think Michkov probably appreciated it, even if it wasn't always easy.
And going from St. Petersburg to Sochi is the equivalent for people who have never been to places like that. Is like going from LA to like Winnipeg. Okay. Like St. Petersburg is beautiful. It's a very kind of like new age kind of city. Like it's a nice place. Sochi, on the other hand, very cool.
They had the Olympics there in Sochi. Isn't it warm?
I don't know. They did Winter Olympics.
Yeah, but it wasn't snowing, I don't think.
I don't think I was that warm.
Not that warm.
All right.
I don't think it's Winnipeg.
It's not Siberia.
Right.
I like it. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about the Stars. We've got, oh no, my computer's freezing, guys. Hold on. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Stars. So we've got Jake Ott and Casey DeSmith, both playing big minutes and doing some good things for Dallas. But would you be able to put a guess on which player has a better save percentage for the Stars right now? Jake Oettinger or Casey DeSmith?
It's got to be Oettinger, right?
I'm going to go with DeSmith. I don't know the answer to this, but like when I was watching the game last night against Calgary and the Flames were out shooting them like basically 2-1, if not more, I was like, ooh, tough night for Otter. And I was like, oh, wait, it's DeSmith in net. He's been really good for them. So I'm going to go DeSmith, but I don't know the answer.
All right. So the answer is, and again, little skewed because of obviously a difference in games played, but Casey DeSmith right now with a .919, Jake Oettinger 0.909. So it is Casey DeSmith taking the win.
Wow. So does it matter who's in net? Dallas just protects their goalies, or no? I guess save percentage.
Yeah, but
they were protecting him last night. That's for sure. He stopped like 46 shots.
I just have trouble keeping track of where Casey DeSmith is, although it does feel like he usually shows up and does a pretty good job there. So credit to him. And one more thing that Dallas might be comfortable with. All right, let's talk about which fan base should be more concerned about their team next season. Obviously, we have a couple teams in the league who are sort of thinking ahead. Boston or Detroit? Who's looking like it could get worse before it gets better? Which fan base should be more worried?
Boston for sure. For me, I mean, at least Detroit has young players that are still continuing to get better, whereas the Bruins, like that pipeline is pretty rusted out at this point. and they could really use some high picks in the next couple of years.
That's fair.
I'll say Detroit just to be a little different. Also, Boston never has trouble getting free agents to sign there. I think it's still a destination because, well, they're both original six teams, but the Bruins seem like further along, a little maybe closer. Like you still got Pasternak, you still got McAvoy, you got Swayman. That's the beginnings of a championship core, in my opinion. So does Detroit have a similar like 1, 2, 3? Like they don't have a goalie. Say what you want about I can't even remember his name. The defenseman.
Well, they got Moritz Seider.
They
They got Lucas Raymond. They got Dylan Larkin.
I'll say Boston's got the edge, in terms of give me their best forward, their best D, their best goalie.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with Detroit, and I've kind of heard this discussed a lot, and it's why the Augustine discussion is even more interesting, is it's like we joke, but they have so many goalies right now, but they don't even have anything close to like the guy.
Sure.
And that is not going to be something that is as easy to just find and figure out over the summer, the way Boston might need to pick up players here and there. But at least they have Jeremy Swayman. At least they do have their guy, whether or not that ends up being everything and all that it takes. So I don't know. I think Detroit maybe has their work cut out for them. That certainly should be one of their biggest priorities this offseason for Stevie Y. All right. How about this? Nazem Kadri, is he the Flames' best free agent signing? Yes or no?
He's looking like it right now. Yeah. Nazem Kadri is showing why, sometimes the best trades, and, Ryan mentioned this with St. Louis, like in Braden Shen, is the ones that you don't make. And I don't know if Kadri was seriously on the market at the deadline, but there were rumblings that the Leafs should go get him to be their number 3 center. Is he the best free agent signing the Flames have had? I don't even know who the second best is. So I'm going to say yes. Like who has signed there that has made a huge impact? Is it Jacob Marchand? Probably
win
not.
By default?
Yeah, by default. Like no one really signs in Calgary of worth.
Yeah. I mean, I like Blake Coleman, but Blake Coleman takes things to the next level in the playoffs, and Calgary needs to get to the playoffs, which they might.
Yeah.
But yeah, Kadri has been just fantastic for them. It's like him and Dustin Wolf are really driving the bus.
Yeah, it has been fun to watch them. And I mean, having seen what Kadri did in Colorado, I mean, they're still sad that he's gone. Like he's just that guy. So certainly a big get, I think, safe to say, for the Flames. All right. Well, Sidney Crosby is the first player in NHL history to record 20 point per game seasons. That is every single season of his career. This guy is absolutely the most consistent player I've ever seen. So will anyone currently playing in the NHL ever be able to top this? And so for reference, we've got McDavid at 10 straight point per game seasons. McKinnon has 8 straight.
I think, well, first of all, could Crosby get 21 next year? I think that's entirely possible.
Totally fair.
Yeah. And it's interesting because it's points per game. So you don't actually have to worry about injuries with this stat. So because of that, I think McDavid could do it because it's hard to foresee a season in which McDavid, when on the ice, isn't a point per game player. But it's a very impressive record.
For sure.
Yeah, I'll say McDavid does it. Like how do you not put him in any conversation that includes will he do this for points or will he do this for goals? Like the guy's just insane. But wow, what a run it's been by Sidney Crosby. And again, this year he's doing it again. And it's unfortunately 3 straight years he's not going to be in a playoff mix. So I don't even think I don't see the Penguins getting out of this for next year. So I guess this is the only thing that he's really got to look forward to.
Yeah, his new career goal is just to extend this to as many seasons as possible, so no one can ever break his little record here. And I mean, it is
ESPN talking about this, Katie? By the way,
not enough. The problem is that he did this against the Sabres, so already you don't have a ton of eyeballs on that game. And then the Penguins ended up losing like 7-3, so it's like he can't have nice things. He breaks this record, and he still has to get beat up by Buffalo. So that's a tough night at the office. But again, just a testament to Crosby's consistency. You love to see it. All right, I have a bonus question for you guys before we wrap
Ooh.
this up. Michael, I don't need to ask you because your contender plays today. So BC is still in the mix for the NCAA championship. Ryan, I'm going to give you a quick opportunity because of your early
Ooh.
out to adjust and pick a new NCAA champion if you have one in mind.
Okay. You know what? Okay, let's go. Let's go with Western Michigan then.
Oh, welcome to
Yeah.
the team.
Team
Older
Western
team.
Two
Michigan.
versus one.
Yeah. Older team. They've got goal. They've got a goalie.
Yep.
They do not play in the Big Ten. So
That's a
let's
big
go Western Michigan.
qualifier. All right, so we got two Westerns. We are riding on the Broncos, and of course, we've got Boston College still. They play against Bentley as we record this here today. So good stuff, guys. All right, well, that does it for this episode of the Hockey News Big Show. Make sure, as always, to follow social media. Check out what's going on at thn.com. All of the news stories coming out every single day. For Michael Traikos and Ryan Kennedy, I'm Katie Gaus, and we will see you all next week. Thanks, guys.